So we return to our beloved story of the flower communion. For some reason, I don't have many stories I just return to over and over and over again, but this is one that kind of never ceases to hit my heart and connect us to our theological roots in a way that I feel most comfortable. So today I will share once again the story of the flower communion. The flower communion was a service created by Norbert Čapek, who founded the Unitarian Church in Czechoslovakia. The service today is compiled of different parts of services that come from the UUA and other resources on Čapek. So let me start a little bit by telling you about Dr. Čapek. Like many Unitarians, his spiritual journey took him through various religious traditions. He began his life as a Roman Catholic, and after becoming disillusioned with the Catholic faith, he became a Baptist. He began a career as a minister, missionary, publicist, and a composer of hymns. We have a number of his hymns in our hymnal. As World War II ignited and his religious views became increasingly liberal, he came under danger of arrest by authorities because his political and liberal religious writings made him a threat to the government. So he decided to move to the United States. Dr. Čapek met his wife Maya at New York City at the public library, where she worked as a librarian. They were married in 1917. And in 1919, after coming to the conclusion that he could no longer be a Baptist, he resigned his pastorate. And before Dr. Čapek and his wife returned to Czechoslovakia in 1921, they were introduced to Unitarian by their two children from a previous marriage. Two children of his from a previous marriage who had gone to a service in Orange, New Jersey. It is reported that there they found not only clear heads, but warm hearts. Upon their returns to the now independent Czechoslovakia, Čapek established the Prague Congregation of Religious Fellowship. 9 years later, this congregation would get a new name, the Unitarian Church of Czechoslovakia, an official recognition by the Czech government. From the pulpit, Dr. Čapek encouraged his fellow citizens to have courage in the face of the growing Nazi madness. We are here today, he said in 1938, the only nation in the whole of Europe that is ready to resist oppression. Confronting our descendants, we will never have to feel ashamed of the fact that as a small nation in the middle of Europe, we were ready to defend human dignity, freedom, and justice from violence, lies, and lawlessness. When the Nazis took control of Prague in 1940, they found Čapek's gospel of the inherent worth and beauty of every human person to be, as Nazi court records show, too dangerous to the Reich for him to be allowed to live. Amazing, really, when you think about it. Maybe not so amazing when you come to think about it. On March 28th, 1941, Čapek and his youngest daughter Zora were arrested by the Nazi Gestapo. I'm going to say the wrong word. They were charged and convicted of listening to foreign radio broadcasts. You can tell what's in my head, right? Yeah, summer is upon us and there's tomatoes in the fields. This was not a made-up charge. It was a crime in his country at a time where trying to find the truth was seen as a crime. Dr. Čapek spent a year in Dresden prison and then before being sent to Dachau. He wrote a meditation that you heard earlier when he was captive in the Dresden prison in 1942. Here it is. In the depths of my soul, there where lies the source of strength, where the divine and the human meet. There, quiet your mind. Quiet, quiet. Outside, let lightning rain. Horrible darkness frighten the world, but from the depths of your own souls, from that silence, will rise again God's flower. Return to yourself, rest in yourselves, live in the depths of your soul where the divine and the human meet. Tune your heart to the eternal and let the depths of your soul, your panting quiets down where the divine and the human meet. There is your refuge. I always find it amazing, people who are in prisons and they write of such beauty. Dr. Chapek was killed the next year during a Nazi medical experiment, quote unquote. This gentleman suffered a cruel death, but his message of hope and decency lives on through the flower communion, which is widely celebrated in Unitarian Universalist congregations today. It is a noble and meaning-filled ritual we are about to recreate. This service includes original prayers of Dr. Chapek to help us remember the principles and dreams for which he died. When the news of his death reached the United States, the American Unitarian Association president, Frederick May Elliott, wrote, "Another name is written to the list of heroic Unitarian martyrs, by whose death our freedom has been brought. Ours is now the responsibility to see to it that we stand fast in the liberty that was so gloriously won." The Unitarian Universalist Flower Communion service, which we're about to celebrate, was originated by Dr. Chapek. For some times, he had felt the need for a symbolic ritual that would bind people together more closely. The format had to be one that wouldn't alienate anyone who had forsaken other religious traditions. And the traditional Christian communion service with bread and wine was unacceptable to many of his members because of their strong reaction against Catholic faith. So instead, he turned to the native beauty of their countryside for elements of the communion which would be genuine to them. On the last Sunday before the summer recess of Unitarian Church in Prague, the people of the church participated in this colorful ritual, which gives concrete expression to the humanity affirming principles of our liberal faith. This simple service was the result. The flower communion was brought to the United States in 1940 by Dr. Chapek's wife, Maya, during her tour of the United States. Maya was also a minister who was ordained in 1926. The first church to hold the flower communion in the United States was the Unitarian Church in Cambridge. Unfortunately, Maya was unable to return to Prague due to the outbreak of World War II, and it wasn't until the war was over that Norbert Chapek's death in the Nazi concentration camp was revealed. From this beginning, the service has spread to many Unitarian Universalist congregations and has been adapted along the way. In 1961, a letter to the American Unitarian Association, Maya Chapek explained Norman Chapek's flower communion in this way. Chapek's only motivation was to stress and bring about community. As a symbol, he used flowers because in the name of a flower or flowers, no wars were waged, as was the case with the cross or the chalice. The flowers are used as symbols of the gifts with which each person can make to the church and through the church to other persons. Because of the large variety that people are, they're able to express their individuality. The exchange of flowers means that I shall walk without reservation with anyone, regardless of their social status or former religious affiliation, as long as they are ready and willing to go along in the search of truth and service to humankind. So people were asked to bring a flower of their choice, either from their gardens or from the fields or from the roadside. He had a country church. And when they arrived at the church, there was a large vase that stood waiting in the vestibule. Each person was asked to put their own flower in the vase, and this signified that it was by their own free will that they joined with others. The vase that contained the flowers was a symbol of the United Church Fellowship. And then later, which will happen now if somebody can help Lori, they carried the vase to the front of the sanctuary and they placed it on a table there. The significance of the flower communion is that no two flowers are alike. So no two people are alike, yet each has a contribution to make. Together, the different flowers form a beautiful bouquet. Our common bouquet would not be the same without a unique addition of each individual flower. Thank you, they look gorgeous. And thus it is the same with our church community. It wouldn't be the same without each and every one of us. Thus, this service is a statement of our community. After the service, each person in Chapek's church took a flower from the vase other than the one that they had brought, and by exchanging flowers, they showed their willingness to walk together with one another in that search for truth, disregarding all that might divide us. Each person took home a different flower brought by somebody else, and also symbolizing that shared celebration of community. The communion of sharing is essential to a free people of a free religion. Whenever Chapek conducted his flower communion in Prague, he would say this proverb as he consecrated the flowers: "Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessings on these, thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us amidst diversities of knowledge and gifts to be one in desire and affection, devoted to thy holy will. May they remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of those most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of each other's talents discourage us or sully our relationship, but may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in this world."
So over a year ago, before spring had sprung and the pandemic was still something happening outside of Minnesota, on a Friday afternoon, I was in my car leaving work and happened to turn on NPR to listen to what was Science Friday. It was about halfway through the program as the radio came on, but there was the voice of Ira Flato asking the guests that day about how quickly flowers can rebound from a trauma that was inflicted upon them. I was intrigued. The guest was Nathan Nuchala, an assistant professor of biology at the University of Missouri in St. Louis. He was co-author on a study published in New Phytologist, I hope I pronounced that right, about the resiliency of flowers. He answered very excitedly that yes, flowers do recover very quickly from events that should probably have ended them. He said that short of being dug up out of the ground or hit with a lawnmower, flowers can survive being bent over, buried, stepped on, or in some cases even eaten. They can be bent in a storm, and a day or so later be standing proud and upright again. Flowers are particularly resilient, which is amazing. Flowers are a symbol of resiliency. They are a metaphor reflecting our own lives. We human beings are not always as resilient as a flower. Our wounds don't heal as quickly, but we aren't entirely dissimilar. We can both be bent, almost broken, and come back strong. In this time when brokenness has seemed the norm and we have been bent down by just about everything, I encourage you to look to these wonderful flowers that are abundantly growing all around us and see them as a symbol of healing. I'd like to share part of a poem with you. There is sweet music here that softer falls than petals from blown roses on the grass, or night dews on the still waters between walls of shadowy granite in a gleaming past. That's my music that gentlier on the spirit lies than tired eyelids upon tired eyes. Music that brings sweet sleep down from blissful skies. Here are cool mosses deep, and through the moss the ivies creep, and in the stream the long-leaved flowers weep. And from the craggy ledge the poppy hangs in sleep. There is indeed sweet music here today from all around us, except maybe the traffic. Now, admittedly, I stole that stanza of poetry from Alfred Lord Tennyson, who wrote of a land so lush and thick with life, flowers and beauty that it literally sang. The piece I just shared was a very small stanza within a much larger poem entitled The Lotus Eaters, based on Homer's Odyssey, where a group of rather resilient sailors happen upon a mysterious yet mesmerizing island in their travels on the sea. They explore this land, reveling in its beauty, and discover a native people who call themselves the Lotus Eaters. Their favorite food is an enchanted plant called the lotus. Well, Tennyson describes this beautiful land with such detail that you can almost smell the richness as you read it. There's also a dark side to this land. The lotus, if eaten, will make you lazy and sleepy. And this is exactly what happens to the sailors. They eat the lotus and they have no more thoughts of leaving ever. Such is the power of a plant, right? Such is the power of humankind, for we also have inside each and every one of us sweet music. The flower communion reminds us that we are not at all unlike flowers or plants. Each of us are unique individuals, yet we are part of something greater than ourselves. Alone, we have internally the power to do tremendous things, the ability to mesmerize, to enchant one another. We create and build and share love all over the world. Banded together, this power becomes even stronger and more resilient. However, just as the island and the lotus eaters becomes a much darker place, human beings also have a darker side. Alongside the ability to love and to create, there is the ability to do just the opposite. In comparing ourselves with flowers, I have to ask which flowers you chose to bring here today. Some of us picked from our own gardens. You can see flowers are beautiful here. They smell wonderful, by the way. Some picked from their own gardens, maybe from a flower shop. Perhaps you did pick some wildflowers from the side of the road. Did anybody pick a dandelion flower? They're growing all over the lawn here. Now, dandelions have a bad reputation. Thank you. We got to add it to the, I'll add it in there. This little yellow flower has a really bad reputation. They pop up nearly everywhere, as you can see. They're only around for a few days, then their yellow flower turns to fluffy seeds, which get carried by the wind and deposited in new places in order to have more dandelions pop up. And thus the cycle continues and continues and continues. Now, you must admit this is a rather efficient means of survival, yet such strong measures are taken to try to keep them from coming back. The dandelion is labeled a weed, an invader who does not belong in our yards or in our neighborhoods. They're killed off by droves with pesticides or dug up by the roots, so they cannot regenerate. But if we stop and think about what's happening here, we discover that we are eliminating one of nature's finest creations, the very essence of resiliency. Look past the word pest, look past the word weed, and what you'll find in a dandelion is the sweetest of music. They are full of health. They not only contain vitamin A and C, as well as strong amounts of iron and calcium, among many more vitamins and minerals. They are a provider of food. You can eat the flower. The leaves make an amazing salad. Probably don't want to eat the stem, it doesn't taste good. The root can be dried and ground into a powder to use as nutritional supplement, or you can actually make coffee from it. And I'm sure most of you probably know about the less nutritious but much more fun dandelion wine. My point here today is not to discuss the health benefits of a little yellow flower, but to explore the metaphor. The flower communion is a time when we come together as a congregation. In looking back at the story of how the flower communion came to be, we should look closely at the reasons why we do this each year. To quote UU Reginald Zatoli, who said, "The significance of the flower communion is that no two flowers are alike, so no two people are alike, yet each has a contribution to make. Together, the different flowers form a beautiful bouquet. Our common bouquet would not be the same without the unique addition of each individual flower, and thus it is with our church community. It would not be the same without each and every one of us." People are indeed like flowers. Some stand out more than others. Some are more subtle. Some are loud, others not so much. Some of us like to have the freedom to plant ourselves wherever we wish. Others prefer a more ordered existence. Some of us will never stray far from the flower pot, yet some of us will let ourselves be carried on the wind. Some of us are looked at as beautiful, while some of us are wrongly seen merely as weeds. And again, from Reginald Zatoli. Together, the different flowers form a beautiful bouquet. Our common bouquet would not be the same without the unique addition of each individual flower. Why choose to eliminate or exclude any flower when each is unique and our world would not be the same without it? We're all part of a great power of existence. All of us belong in this garden. As in the lotus eaters, life contains many levels. Once the men in the poem saw beyond the surface beauty, they found something much more real. Looking past the word weed, we find something very real and very special. Hidden beneath the surface that has been ravaged against is gold. On the surface, it may look uninviting, but deeper inside, it is shouting sweet music for anyone willing to hear it. Everyone in this giant garden we call home has the power to do tremendous things. We have the power to raise one another up and the power to cut one another down. Would it not be better to look at what we called weeds and instead call them beautiful and let them thrive because they are a vitally important part of the resilient bouquet of life? How about looking at another human face and seeing beyond the surface? Look deeper, see what we all have to offer. We, like the flowers that grow where they're not always welcome, have a power to cause amazing things to happen. Listen out there, quiet your mind. You will be able to hear the sweet music because it's coming from resilient you.